All right. On this episode of the Practical Occult Podcast, we have Kelley Towne, author of Stones in the Glade, The Old Craft in a New World. Kelley is not merely an author, but a tarot reader, a working witch, and a commentator on social media about many things relating to magic. So, Kelley, welcome to the podcast. So, the first traditional question that we ask everybody is if you could grab your average occultist by the shoulders, shake them roughly, and say one thing that you think that your average magic person needs to know that they don't, what would that be?
Well, I would say there are a lot of things that go into a fundamentally solid magical practice. But I do know that sometimes occultists aren't the only ones that watch this, so I'm going to try to be as general as possible here. I would say to sharpen and focus your mind. Your mind is your greatest tool, and the rest usually follows. With your mind, make sure that you can concentrate, make sure that you can visualize, make sure that you can direct energy to where it has to go, because that is the end goal of spell work. That is what you're doing. You're leading with intention, putting it to action, and then directing it to where it has to go. This is why I say intention isn't everything. This is probably just another piece of advice I would say. Um, but yeah, once your mind is sharpened and also strong enough to prohibit outside interference from coming in and interfering with your work or messing you up. The rest follows. So I would definitely say, as a general piece of advice to any budding occult practitioner, witch, or what have you, sharpen your mind. The rest follows.
So, certainly agreed. I mean, I speak a great deal about this on all of my social medias that the constant exercises that people would see in old books about like hold the thought in your mind, people will always skip over that, and they will come back later on to learn from people and realize that they suck at this because they skipped the very first practice, the very first thing. In your book, you talk a great deal, which is interesting. For a book that's not even 200 pages long, you produce a great primer for somebody to go from zero to hero, so to speak. So if you could talk about when you talk about the distractions that can happen during spell work, 'cause I think that's the thing that's not often spoken of enough. So can you give some examples of what that might look like?
Distractions during spell work. In my own personal experience, it's also the mundane things. Sometimes you'll hear a car beeping outside or traffic. You may even have things going on at home, other family members speaking or talking, things like that. But also, there are distractions that are non-physical and non-mundane. Um, for example, if you're working with spirits and you're trying to talk to this one specific spirit, sometimes they don't come alone. So then you have these other ones trying to distract you. And this is again going back to what I said about strengthening your mind, and making sure that these distractions don't shake you and that they don't come in. And there's also intrinsic distractions, self-doubt, fear about the work that you're doing, which why are you doing said work if you're so afraid of it? It doesn't do you any good. It's only going to bite you in the butt. But then, so intrinsic, it also includes so self-doubt, fear, um, trepidation, and also lack of knowledge of what you're doing. And they even talk about this in the witch's pyramid, which is a fundamental for any occult practitioner, witch, magician, what have you, to have a solid foundation of practicing magic. For those who aren't familiar, it's the to know, to dare, to will, to be silent, and to go. That's the fifth one. Not many people know about that one, and I do write about it in my book in great detail. But to know is the first part of the pyramid, so know what you're doing. So that's another intrinsic distraction I can think of. And of course, there are other distractions that may not be solved in a matter of minutes or days, weeks, months, years. That's long-term conditioning over time. Sometimes we're conditioned to believe a certain way, and that can actually affect our magic a lot. I don't know if you guys have ever read Paul Hewson's Mastering Witchcraft. One of the supposed ways to become a witch, according to Paul Hewson, is recitation of the Lord's Prayer in reverse over the course of 3 nights. And it's meant as a tool to undo Christian conditioning. Presumably, now, presumably that the reader's Christian, and it was also published in 1970, so it's a product of its time. It's catering to an audience that's mostly Christian, and it's meant to break the conditioning. Now, this type of distraction is harder to break, and it takes a lot of time and inner work. But all in all, those are the different types of distractions I can think of when it comes to magic that could negatively impact the work.
It's interesting you bring up Hewson, because obviously, when he wrote what he wrote, it was very controversial, especially at a time when like Wicca was in its generative growth, and
Mhm.
especially when it comes to the public perception of witchcraft. That's it's funny. You're one of the authors who speaks against, for example, the threefold law concept of karma, right?
Yes,
Um, and it's interesting because the taboo aspect of the Lord's Prayer in reverse and pushing yourself beyond a boundary is pretty classic in various witch traditions. And so to speak more to that, what would you say would be an equivalent modern taboo that a person might have to break in terms of conditioning? Because obviously we don't live in the 1970s any longer.
right. I would say, and a big one now, the conditioning by the media. Now, back in the 1970s, media didn't play a role in people's lives like it does now. We're constantly surrounded by screens. We're constantly surrounded by news and, in a way, the powers that be that put these stories out, horrible news stories. And hell, I can tell you right now, I don't watch the news very much because I find it very draining and I don't find it very conducive for keeping a strong mind when it comes to doing magic and everything that I do practically on a daily basis. Um, Breaking the conditioning of media and, there's like a sense of control that comes with it influences our brainwaves, it influences everything. So I would say the modern equivalent of that is breaking the dependency and the reliance on media. I know that's rich coming from me. Yes, I'm on social media. I have commentary on different matters relating to witchcraft, the occult, folklore, whatnot. But there also has to be a line drawn. Even in my part of this, I've just drawn a line. Like, for example, like having just this be the sole focus of why I'm on social media in the first place for no other reason. Um, Not doom scrolling, no brain rot. It's kind of funny to watch sometimes, but again, moderation is another principle that teaches discipline in that sense. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, sure, it absolutely does.
Do you believe that witchcraft is something that anyone can do if they try?
No,
It's hard no.
I will explain why. So, this is a very controversial opinion that I have, and I've talked about this before too. I do not feel like every single person can be a witch, just like not everyone can be a mechanic or a plumber or a musician. We all have different aptitudes. And I am of the persuasion that being born into this is kind of what makes it so. And even the people that argue that, oh, yeah, anyone can be a witch if they study, they try hard. Okay, yeah, you have some people that not necessarily born into families or even lineages. You don't necessarily have to have like a parent that practiced witchcraft, maybe like a great grandmother or something. And even then, they probably didn't practice witchcraft per se. They did like some type of regional folk magic, like in my case. My great grandmother practiced Benedicaria, which is Italian Catholic folk magic, was used for healing. So I know she'd shudder in her grave if I called her a witch. But the point here is, yeah, some people argue, yeah, anyone could be a witch. Yeah, but why are you drawn to it in the first place? There's got to be some intrinsic drive or inner predilection that you're born with in order to follow it, even though you weren't technically born into a family practicing it or even a lineage for that matter. I've always found that very interesting. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, it's widely known that Allison and I participated in a panel talking about witch blood and our belief about it. Allison and I both
Hmm.
have remarkably spooky families,
Hmm.
remarkably enchanted upbringings and experiences. And interestingly enough, and Allison spoke to this better than I did in the panel, but there are certain, even in a person who's seemingly mundane, their life, if they do like research into their family, they may find like, oh yeah, well, your grandpa dreamed the future. He just didn't talk about it very much. Or like, oh,
Hmm.
like maybe your great uncle, he always knew where things were when they were lost. We'd call him on the phone and it would just, he'd just know. So there is that. And it's interesting because you find mundane analogs of this, people who are great
Hmm.
martial artists, for example. It's like, oh yeah, your
Hmm.
granddad liked to fight too, or oh well, like this, and like these things trickle down through lineage, and of course things can spontaneously generate, of course.
Right.
One could talk about, past lives as this, that. I mean, of course, that can't be proven like genetic lineage can, and like,
Right.
family folklore can. But so it's interesting to speak to that. What are some of the proofs of concept for you that a person can do witchcraft? Like if you like take an average person and they were like, all right, let's get like a checklist. Like what are some of the things that they could look for?
Well, this is a very good question. I'm just pondering it for a minute. And again, I'm answering based on my own personal experiences. So it's so like in my particular case, psychic gifts run in my family. Dreaming of the deceased, dreaming of the future. It's kind of funny. You were just talking about dreams. Well,
Mhm.
that's um that's like in my particular situation. So I would say one is just having a sense of knowing or intuition that most other people don't have. I like to say that everybody has instincts, but not everybody's intuition is that great. And the distinction I make between the two is that instinct is what has helped us survive as a species for all these years.
Mhm.
Intuition is not always about the physical, but it's also about the spiritual as well. Um, there is also just being drawn to, for example, if you're exposed to, I don't know, witchcraft TV shows from a young age or things like that, and you find yourself drawn to it, more than just saying, "Oh yeah, I like the witch hat" or whatever, but you just feel like this pull towards it, not just being interested on a superficial level. I would, again, this goes back to, the people that say, "Oh yeah, you study really hard to be a witch. Anyone can be a witch." Yeah, but when you use that logic, how are you getting to it in the first place? Sometimes it's gnosis that is it comes through to you as um symbols, like you're familiar with symbols and what things mean that most other people have forgotten about, or that nobody really cares about anymore. For example, there are ancient symbols like the labyrinth, or Hecate's wheel, things like that. There are a lot of symbols that may appear, like in archaeology, whatnot, but then you have this sense of knowing that it was important at one point and it still holds significance and power. Um, being drawn to animals, being drawn to nature. Yeah, you have mundane, regular people that are drawn to nature too. I have a lot of friends that are drawn to nature, but they're not necessarily witches. Um, and also the ability to do things, not just know things, but do things that other people cannot do. Um, like concentrate in order to do spell work and just intrinsically know to direct that energy and power to where it has to go.
I mean, that's the thing. During the panel that I mentioned, I mentioned I went to a sales seminar when I was in college, and the guy who was
Right.
teaching it was just teaching witchcraft. He's like, oh yeah, it's gonna sound weird, guys, but imagine you have a bubble, just a bubble.
Mhm.
You can make your bubble big or small and put people in the bubble, and then you can make them think whatever you want when they're in the bubble. And I thought he was talking to me, and I went up to him afterwards. I'm like, who'd you train with? And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, no, like we're talking about this, and he was not having it. He was so you can naturally be this thing and not even know. Like I would argue a lot of
Yeah.
remarkably successful because you have people will talk about this, right? Like I'm a good manifester, and like they'll do
Hmm.
a secret and it'll actually fucking work. And to them, it's like, well, yeah, everyone
Yeah.
can do this. And it's like, no, that might be the gift. But that's the thing. People used to refer to it. You're gifted for the
Mm.
work, have the sight, you have the talent. And
Okay. I did want to make a comment on witch blood, giving another definition to
yeah,
it,
go
that
for it.
it's not always so literal. Um, So, witch blood also refers to the spiritual bloodline. It's not always a literal bloodline, it's a
Mhm.
spiritual one. And some streams of traditional witchcraft, at least the framework that I've worked in for a number of years now, is all about spiritual initiation through the old ones and your inner witch blood or witch fire, as it's sometimes called in different texts. Um, it is awakened by spirit initiation, and that can be passed down not so much through blood itself, but through passing of knowledge to, so to speak, like the next generation,
Mhm.
even if that next generation isn't, alive at the same time as you are.
Right.
Because one day you will join the spirit world and you're going to be part of what do they call the mighty dead. And you are part of that spiritual lineage and spiritual ancestry that all witches do have.
Hmm. So actually, one follow-up question. This is the thing that a lot of witch
Mhm.
traditions will agree or disagree on. Can a person who is not a witch be made one?
They could be initiated into covens and made one, I suppose. But again, how are they coming to that coven in the first place?
Well, that's exactly it.
There has to be some intrinsic drive to get them to that point. And they're probably born with a predilection. Now, everybody's got different skill levels, even those who are witches. We're all going to have different skill levels, and that's normal. Just like it's a natural order of things, you have the weak and the strong. Same with us. I would say, again, you could be made one, but again, the argument where where is it coming from? You don't just walk into a coven meeting one day and become initiated. That is if you're, becoming a part of a tradition, of course. So,
Oh, sure, sure. Like I say, it's an oft debated one at this point. There are some witchcraft lineages that will say that not only can you, but like for example, in Trinidad and Obeah, you can force someone to become a witch as a curse. And so like, fine, you want to be
oh,
this, I will fine, like let's start you now. Like you don't have a whole life to learn. You got to do this right now. And you fill somebody with it, and it's like it's a sink or swim kind of thing. And most people sink, allegedly. You know, but it's interesting because that group will be like, oh, you absolutely can make someone a witch. Maybe you shouldn't, but you totally can, and it does beg the be careful what you wish for question too. Because I think that a number of people who hear about these things, read about these things, want so desperately to be the thing, and maybe they're not. Like, and it's because you even see this in like American folk magic, like, oh, I didn't have the gift, and then I went to the crossroads, and the devil gave me the gift, but now I'm crazy. Now it didn't fit right, is the folklore. Like he fitted in me wrong, and now I have to,
mm,
do that. And oftentimes you even see this in conjure traditions, especially in Appalachia, where it's like you steal lightning from the devil at the crossroads, is the folklore, but it scorches you. Like you're made weird and wrong as a result of it. So like you didn't have the gift, you stole the gift, and the spirits
mm.
will hound you forever because you're not supposed to have it, and they would like, this whole thing. So it is an interesting just debate that's happening right now, and I love getting people's takes on it.
Right. And it is interesting. So when I was talking about witch blood, witch fire, for example, in parts of rural England, one way to become a witch, there are many different initiation rituals, and they're all spirit-led initiations.
Mm.
So they say that if you were to walk backwards around a church with like a graveyard in it, you'd walk backwards like, 3 times, and then the devil would appear and initiate you. And then there's also the one where you would crouch to the floor and put one of your hands under the soles of your feet and then one of your hands up above the top of your head. Everything from the hands down belongs to the devil. And we even see here that this isn't a necessarily physical person led initiation. This is a spirit initiation. And what you're mentioning, especially with the crossroads, yeah, they may have. That's again spirit initiation, where they may have been given the gift, but again, it also depends on how you're using it too. It's not so much because there are people that they have these gifts awakened or whatnot. They either don't know what to do with them or they misuse them and it screws their life up royally. And no one ever said that being a witch or an occultist was easy. You are changed forever. There is no closing that door once you decide to acknowledge your natural predilection or state of being. So it's really interesting how you mentioned spirit initiations and you know,
Oh, truly. Okay, so another thing that's interesting, so just to switch gears a bit. So, for full disclosure for the audience at home, I have had a reading with Kelley, and I've noticed that your style of reading tarot is different than what I've often seen. So, without going into too much detail, I gave you a complicated question, a specifically magic-oriented question, and not only did you answer it and find things that you couldn't have otherwise known, a good test of a reader, right? But when you read, is it just you, or do you have familiars and spirits that aid you in reading?
well, that is a question. So oftentimes it's stuff relayed to me and that I intrinsically know
Hmm.
by attuning with the client's energy. And I'm talking about just any client in general, really here. I usually attune to their energy first, but there are times where I will have non-corporeal beings and spirits providing me information. That's going to be my answer to that. Without disclosing too much detail, of course,
Yeah, of course. I'm
because
not.
some things are meant to be sacred.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to be like, hey, what's your familiar's name? What's its seal? I'm not going to be like that. That's a little bit. That's a little bit. That's a bridge too far. But it's just interesting to
Mm,
see. You read like a witch does, and that's interesting because when you get readings from people who are witches versus people who are, and I'm not saying merely psychic as a lesser thing,
mhm.
but there is that spirit community sort of behind the person, and I detected that during the reading, which is interesting. Um, but it's again like to ask the question of like the larger scope of it because people don't talk about this. Is one of the reasons why we do this podcast, right? To talk about the things people don't talk about, and people don't usually communicate with like, oh, I attune to this thing and I do this thing in this way. You get a book on reading cards. It's like, yeah, this is what the cards mean. Is you got to shuffle it and do whatever. Much like so many other books, they don't teach you the the stuff behind the stuff. It's one thing I like about your book is you teach people how the sausage is made, so to speak, in a way. Like you teach them what
Mhm.
to do to make the power source to plug it into, so to speak. So if you could
Right.
talk more to that sort of thing, not necessarily like what you do literally in a specific way, but like how intrinsic that is and important that is to people's practice.
I would say it's very, very important because again, once your mind is sharpened, I'm going to point A here. And it's going to be a recurring theme, I feel like, throughout this whole interview.
Right.
Because if you don't have a strong and sound mind, then your ability to practice magic might be a bit muddled. But anyway, um, I'm I'm so sorry, I just lost track. Could you repeat the question again? Right up.
No, so no, it's
Ah,
cool. And we do like a sharp mind. We like to rotate the apple in our heads in this house. If you can't rotate the apple, you're no friend of mine. But
mm,
no. So the question. So like I said, in your book, you talk a great deal about that it's not just the action that you perform, it's the power behind it, it's accessing it. So if you could speak more to that, that would be cool.
right. So, as I mentioned before, a lot of people have this idea in witchcraft when they're new to it or whatever, and it's also become a meme in the community, and that intention is everything.
Mm.
It's not. You have to, it now intention drives the action so that you can direct it to where it has to go. And there are many different ways to direct energy depending on what you're doing. Sometimes, like for example, if you have a physical target, like a person, place, thing, you can visualize that person, place, or thing. And I'm just going to openly share a method here that I use. I use this part of my head and I just send out whatever I want. I just get into this state as almost like it's almost like a bird with wings, so to speak. It's like
Mm.
I'm not like sending myself out. I'm sending my thoughts out as a bird or as something that flies or just is able to go out into the ether and going out into, you know, like where it has to go. It's kind of hard to explain. It feels like it's almost like describing how to breathe at this point. I know it sounds so silly, but because when you do it all the time, um, but even directing it, there's like the idea like the cone of power.
Mhm.
And also there's a physical sensation you might even get when you're conjuring something, when you feel like the work is like building up. So it's like from the bottom of your chest and it just works its way up. And then you're exhausting it as you're directing it. And one way that I even learned from somebody is once the desire is exhausted, your spell is complete. It's not just when the candles burn down. It's not just when the actions are done. Yeah, they can be done, but that's when you know that everything's been sent out where it has to go. Visualizations aside, of course, sometimes it's a bodily sensation.
No, that's excellent. In fact, it's obviously folklorically, it is a mark of real witchcraft to be able to send yourself out of yourself, even in part or in whole. And I think that's one of the interesting proving grounds, so to speak, of the practice, right? Where you're like, if you're trying to teach somebody and you're like, hey, do this thing, like like put your mind somewhere else, and if they go, oh, I don't know how to, I can't do that, I can't, and then maybe, it's not for you, you know what I mean? Because that's the thing. I mean, we are, as practitioners of magic, one of the key abilities is to be able to, you know, reach out and touch things, right? Like, reach out and influence the world in an interesting way.
Right.
So to change.
Yeah.
Oh no, no, go on.
Oh no, what I was going to say was that's actually one of the classical powers of the witch, according to folklore,
Yeah.
is so witch trials, yeah, we have those as sources in the couple of centuries that they happened in the middle of Europe. And that's where we get a lot of things that we know about witchcraft or lack thereof, because some of it was the result of people just confessing under torture.
Right.
When you're under duress, I mean, you don't know what's true or what's not true because some people could be just saying things to get them to stop being whipped or whatnot.
Sure, sure.
But like for example, the Scottish witch Isabel Gowdy
Mhm.
from the 1600s in Scotland, they had some of the worst witch trials. Oh my God. King James even tortured witches himself. He was a horrible, horrible person. No, Jimmy, stop. Um, yeah, so we see the idea of the witches' Sabbath, where witches are said to leave their body. Their soul like leaves their body. It's almost like they're dead and alive at the same time. Because yeah, they have a physical form, but they're able to just send themselves out willingly or unwillingly. Admittedly, there have been times where I've been out of body, out of my control, because I just wanted to be out of my body for a little bit. It usually happens when I'm sleeping.
Mhm.
So, and of course, over time, you learn how to control that because it can be dangerous and also really draining if your soul's out of your body like all the time. So, fortunately, it has weaned off. But visiting the witch's Sabbath, for example, that's one of the classic powers of the witch is to send their body out to supposedly meet with the devil, or in this case, the old ones, in my case, and meet with all these other entities and then just travel to these other realms. Um, and aeronautics, you could even call it that. That's dream journeying. It's the same thing. It's just wearing a different hat. So.
So bringing up the folklore that you just recently spoke of, you mentioned just now and also before the devil, and I think that a lot of people coming from a Christian background are maybe going to hear that
Mm,
and think like, oh, this is
mm.
something that's intrinsically demonic. Can you speak a little bit more about the witch's devil and the idea of like making a pact to get a power versus what your personal experience has been?
Certainly. So the folklore around this. So the church, again, very much against magic for a variety of reasons, goes against God's will, etc. Whatever you want to, however you want to spin it. Church hated it, and then with the Protestant Reformation, it got even worse. So that's why we had witch trials. Some of the worst of them were in Germany, Scotland, even. Germany actually had the highest death toll, unfortunately, and it literally no one was safe there. People of all ages were tried, accused, and killed. But they were believed to create pacts with the devil, and in this case, the Christian devil, because they didn't want people practicing. It was a way of instilling fear into people from thinking for themselves and having a sense of agency and control over their own lives rather than the local priest or bishop or what have you, because the clergy ruled everybody's lives back then. Um, but the witch's devil, very different. Now, the whole creating a pact thing, that's a very common theme in folklore. That's not always done. Now, sometimes it is by modern witches, but in general, the witch's devil is more of an allegory. It's a symbol. It's not nothing like the Christian devil where it's evil and satanic or whatnot. It's more about being wild, being free, being human. We all have desires, we all have needs that need to be met. And sometimes, unfortunately, the church overlooked a lot of those needs and desires and basics for human survival, even. I can I remember even reading about like there were a lot of priests, nuns who would fast for days on end just to get visions of God. I mean, any sane person would say, no, have a sandwich or some schnitzel or something, and not starve to death. The witch's devil is not like that. No, you're here to live your life, um, enjoy things, enjoy pleasures, enjoy, um, have have a sense of self-empowerment and a sense of, I can do this. It's not so much a God giving you like, oh yeah, no, your car just got totaled. Here's a new car. It's not always like that. A lot of the spirits that witches work with aren't so much like, hey, I'm just going to give you this. No, you either have to work for it or they give you the agency and the power. They empower you to make these decisions for yourself so that you can achieve what you want. And that's actually the whole point of magic, even, is to help achieve what you want and be in line with your desires, but you have to be willing to step up to the plate for it. And even then, like I like to describe the whole stereotype of selling your soul to the devil is more of a no, this is my quest for enlightenment. I'm not actually giving my soul away. I mean, it's part of the reason why I'm alive. I'm just on this quest for self-enlightenment and self-empowerment and a sense of mastery over myself and the world around me.
No, that's solid. I mean, it is an interesting thing, the corporeal nature, the near earth nature of the spirits that a
Mhm.
lot of witches deal with. I mean, you see the kind of the same thing in conjure with like the devil at the crossroads. Now, in fairness, there are some conjure traditions where like, oh no, it's Satan. That's our goal, because there are some that are a little darker than others. And there are some where it's like
Right.
he's a crossroads god. He's, the liberator. He's, the one that frees you to be better off in who you are. And I think it's interesting to see these things having parallels in so many places, really. That sort of tutelary, liberating spirit that frees a person to have that agency. And indeed it's funny because the thing I've always said, and I've had teachers of mine, witchcraft teachers, who did say like, oh no, like, I mean, yeah, there were some witch trials, but we are also kind of scary, Like I can leave my body and do whatever I want, and you can't. Like there's a lot of the whole like you have a good reason to be scared of us, actually. Um, and I think what's interesting is, especially in your social media, when you do talk about magic, you don't shy away from how, one of the things I appreciate about you is you don't shy away from how real magic is, how visceral its effects can be. I mean, obviously, you offer professional spellcraft services yourself, so clearly you're willing to put other people's money where your mouth is, right? Like and as someone who does the same, it's like no, my shit works and I can make your life better. But you are very firm about what you will and will not do in terms of for clients, and you give, and unlike a lot of people, you give reasons. You have a great deal of social media content where you're like, I'm not just gonna tell you I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to tell you what works better. So if you could, you're one of the only people actually besides myself I've seen who tackles the love question with what I would approximate as sanity. So yeah, if you could elaborate on that, like what do you? I mean, you just posted something. I think it was today about love spells and whatnot. So if you could riff on that for a second.
course. So I find it very important, not just as a spiritual worker who does readings and spells, but also as a businesswoman. Full disclosure, know what you're getting yourself into when you're purchasing. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, you're purchasing service. Yes, you're doing business with me, but full transparency is what I value as a business owner too. And I know if I were to employ these services from other people, I'd want to maybe not like know their methods necessarily, but I'd want to know the whys, maybe not the hows, because there are a lot of people that see like returning ex-lovers and forcing people to love you. That's a really big market and has been for centuries,
No,
not even just in recent times, but centuries. And
mm,
sometimes it wasn't, for example, I made a video on Italian love potions back in the late medieval Renaissance period in Italy. A love potion, usually, if you were to administer it to a man unknowingly, that wasn't just to secure his affections, that was your survival because that
mm,
meant you were being taken care of financially because a lot of women back then could not work. And of course, you had to pick your husband well, and that was a way to do it. But do I recommend doing that? Absolutely not. But it just goes to show like why I won't do it. There's and even then, I even cite my own misadventures without going into too much detail, of course. I wouldn't want to inflict that on another person. So it's also a sense of personal responsibility. I believe in taking responsibility for my work and what I do. So if I can avoid a bad situation for you, I'm going to. I want to serve your highest good at the end of the day, not your lowest of low and to get you in a terrible situation. And then there are like people who, they want to bring their ex back and it turns out they're not compatible anymore. They were apart for like 5 years or something and it just wouldn't work anymore. Like he's living in a crappy apartment and you're living in a house you bought on your own. Why would you want the back? Or forcing someone to love you, for example. Um, you don't know this person. They could be abusive. They could be narcissistic. Why are you putting yourself in the situation because you think he's attractive? No, I'm not doing that. And plus, even then, when you're forcing someone to love you through magic, it's manufactured. That's not real. Some people will argue, oh, yeah, I'm working with what's already there. How do you know it's already there? How do you know? What are the signs? So, all in all, I believe in a sense of personal responsibility and full disclosure when it comes to working um, with magic. And I know I just went on a total tirade there, but I just wish more people would understand. And again, I was talking about desires and stuff before when talking about the old one, the old devil. So there are times where I will say that maybe ignoring your passions might be a good idea because it could save your life or at least make your life better. And unwittingly binding yourself to a narcissist with a love spell, for example, why would you do that? And then there are actually times where they're like you're working a love spell for someone, right? And then they're like, yeah, I really want this person. Okay, whatever. Get what you wish for. Then they turn around 3 months later and they're like, I want to break up with him. He's horrible. Again, and that's me just avoiding a bad situation.
mm.
I'm like, okay, but why did you ask me to do this in the first place? You got what you wanted. Now you want it. No, no takebacks. There's no takebacks in life, lady.
It's as a professional occultist, I will say, and it's a known thing in the game. Your clients will ruin everything all by themselves, and
Mm,
there are some any dirty job workers out there who they don't give a
mm,
fuck. They're like, if you pay me, if your money is green, I'll do whatever you want, and they make a lot of money, honestly. And it's interesting because I mean, you're kind of stuck as a professional worker between do I want to make a lot of money doing some dark shit, or do I want to have
hmm
a certain personal code of ethics about this sort of thing? And it's interesting because, like I said, one of the differences I see between you and a lot of people who do walk the more ethical, full transparency line is you never say that it doesn't work. And that's the biggest thing because you'll see a lot of people out there who go, oh, well, you can never truly bind someone to you. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, then you don't really do this if you don't think that could be done. Like you don't, and you and I speak privately, Kelley, about like the nature of like power and expansive power in magic and how these things like how real this shit really is, which is of course one of the reasons why we put the podcast out. You know, we are practical occult. We get shit done practically in the world. Um, and we talk to people whose shit works, but also the understanding of how real that is comes with the burden of understanding how real this is. You know, a client, I think a lot of our clients come to us half believing. You know, I don't know if you ever had this happen, but I've had clients who are like, "Oh, I want this thing to happen," and you're like, "Okay, cool," and you do it, and they're like, oh my God, it happened, it really worked," and you're like, what did you spend that money on if you didn't think it was going to work?" Like, I, that was a lot of money you gave me, you know, and you didn't think it was going to work, and they're like, "Well, I didn't know it would work like this," and I'm like, "This is literally what you asked for. Like, this is like, down to the petition what you requested," and they're like, "Well, I don't know." So, have you seen people? And this is maybe a self-serving question because it's a rant I have a lot, but how often do you see people fumbling the bag that you hand them? Nice and gift wrapped. You're like, here's your spell result, here's your magic, and they just completely ruin it themselves.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I have not had too much of that misfortune, especially as of late.
Oh,
Now,
Jesus.
the only time there'll be like people complaining is like, oh, it's taking too slow to
Mm.
manifest. It's not manifesting fast enough. I'm like, first of all, that is not how magic works. Go back to watching your movies. This takes time, and you know what? If it requires work on your part, then you need to do it. And every reading, every spell I do has a 30-minute consultation
Mm.
where, in part, I do talk about the different consequences and potential sacrifices someone may have to make. Yeah, no, this isn't the stereotype of like, oh, yeah, I need to sacrifice my dog or some stupid crap like that. It's more so what you have to give up in your life in general in order to make your dreams a reality. And again, this is the natural order. This is trade-off. And sometimes this comes out of the woodwork as a natural consequence of doing the magic that you want and manifesting what you want in your life. And I know I sound like one of those new age people saying manifesting, but I'm using it in a more general sense of you're bringing something to fruition that you want. And sometimes you have to give up what doesn't serve you. And it's funny, usually things like personal consequence, personal cost, usually are things that no longer serve the person, especially if the spell at hand is serving their highest good. Now, what you mentioned before about people going in half believing. I have this happen to me all the time. Readings, you get a lot of skeptics.
Mm.
Really, it just goes, yeah, you're not a show pony, but at the end of the day, dealing with them, it's about good social skills and having social graces. And also educating them on what it actually is and what it's not. And sometimes you make believers out of people. Sometimes you have like one or two people that are not convinced either way. And you know what? That's fine. If you're not meant for everybody, that's fine. I would even say this in a general mundane sense. Just be yourself. You don't have to resonate with everybody, and not everybody has to like you or anything really. It is what it is. Again, the natural order of things. You get along with some people and you don't click with other people. But yeah, a lot of people do go in half believing or, they have expectations for what the process is or how things are going to manifest, not the what, or sometimes the when. They're very
Mm.
fixated on the when.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, well, it's I did say in the consultation it could take this long. This is a rough estimate of a
Mm.
time frame, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm pretty good with time frames, even in a mundane sense. Sometimes things happen right down to the minute, perfect timing. And like I'll be talking about someone, and then they end up calling.
Mm.
The timing is just seamless. But all in all, I do have that quite often. Yes.
I mean, it's funny though, working in the industry. You know, you do this for enough time. People who you make believers out of. I've also made people crazy because I proved it to them, and that that
Mhm.
can definitely happen. But it's interesting when you bring up the timeline thing. It's just another personal like I do this for a living rant. But like the people who will be like, hey, so I would like to be. I remember this one guy hit me up, and of course I'm not going to name names. But he's like, I want to get a scholarship to Harvard, and I'm like, okay, what is your circumstance? He goes, well, I'm currently homeless and I live in India, and I'm over here doing this stuff, and I'm like, he's like, so what will like $50 get me? And I'm like, a sandwich, my guy. Like that's the best you're gonna get. Like
Oh,
they want the world for nothing sometimes, and it is unfortunately a reality of the game. So to that end,
mhm.
to wrap this particular delightful interview up, we usually ask our guests to bring an example spell working concept to the audience that they think can make them better occultists overall. This is like this is like your reward at the end of the interview, listeners, that you get cool tricks to make you better. So have you got anything of that sort for the people at home?
Right. I'm normally someone who keeps a lot of their spells under wraps. I mean, there are spells at the end of my book, Stones in the Glade, but I'd
Mm.
like to have something unique, particularly for this interview. I'm just going to take 1 second. Okay. So the cauldron is a very, very powerful tool in witchcraft. It represents a womb, and whatever you put into it, something comes out different. Now, you can put liquids in it, you can burn petitions, offerings, and the like. Um, and in my case, I like to when you're burning something, and you can this is very versatile. So this is why I'm including this as part of the interview to answer this question. Um, and you can so what I like to do when I'm burning something, as it's burning, you chant in the cauldron, the womb of creation, give birth to this new reality, accordance to my will, so mote it be. And that's until the petition burns. Now, on the petition, you can write sigils, you can write any particular words, but the one thing you do have to do is include your full birth name and date of birth. You can put personal effects onto it, like bodily fluids, blood, what have you. But make sure if you're doing this this way and putting personal effects onto it, that you really, really want what you're putting this onto. Because, for example, blood magic, that's practically permanent. Once you put it down, you're tying yourself and your being, your physical body to the outcome. And it's better to do that for your own betterment than, say for a hex, a curse. You definitely don't want to be implicated in the personal costs of that too much. Otherwise, all your protections and whatnot, they will have gone out the window. And then the spirits are going to be looking at you like, wait, why did you just do that? I'm not helping you after this. But but yeah, so you can write down words of power, symbols, but visualize the cauldron as the smoke rises up after the fire goes out. The smoke is going up into the ether, and especially as your wish being manifest. Imagine the smoke being your desires and whatever you want to achieve with this very simple procedure going up into the ether and being received by your spirits and literally the powers that be so that they can assist you with this.
Okay, well that's solid. That's some classic stuff, and it goes kind of to your brand, like the thing that's cool, just to wrap this up about your book that I really found charming was like this is the book that people I think in the 1970s and 80s wish they had. Like that like it would be cool if it had existed because it does tie that I don't want to say aesthetic in like a flimsy way, but like it ties that ethos, that image and that kind of soul tie of this like classic witchcraft in North America, particularly kind of way all the way through. I mean, again, it says it's what it is in the tin, old craft in a new world, right? And yeah, that was great. So thank you for being here with us. That this was delightful. And tell the people at home where they can find you if they search.
Hi, then yes, thank you so much for having me on here. It's truly a pleasure and definitely an honor and a privilege. So you can find me on my official website, www.kelleytowne.com. And you can also find me on Instagram as Kelley Towne Official. It's also the same on TikTok. And I also have a Facebook page as well. So give it a like. And I also have a YouTube. It hasn't been as active. I'm more active on Instagram and TikTok, but I do have a Kelley Towne Official YouTube page. So definitely give a like and subscribe.
All right, well, fantastic. And that will end that.